Good morning. Welcome. So we are welcoming you to our first episode of Relational AI Diaries. And the general idea is, right, that we're going to be kind of every week discussing the hot topics in the news relating to AI development, and in particular the language models, LLMs, large language models, but probably not exclusively. We'll see how we go.
Hi, so I'm Peter Dean and colleague of Agnieszka's for a very long time. We've known each other for maybe 15 years or so. My background is, I start off with a technical background in physics, maths and computer science. I ended up teaching theory and practice of new media technologies for a very long time. And then I did a doctorate in education, which was a piece of discourse analysis. So I've got a very wide set of skills and knowledge across both the technical and more humanities aspects of AI. So I'm joining Agnieszka on this venture, Relational AI Diaries, where we're going to be talking about things of interest. I think there's going to be something every week, and we'll both be approaching it from our slightly different backgrounds. But I think we've come to a meeting of minds where we can talk about these things and engage with the content. Agnieszka.
So yeah, no, very briefly. Agnieszka Piotrowska, Dr. Agnieszka. I have a PhD in psychoanalysis and film, particularly focusing on transference out of the clinic, which I guess is what are the unconscious mechanisms which happen between people, particularly where the positions of power are different, power and knowledge. And as a filmmaker, I have been involved with machines of various kinds for decades. So I think it is useful to mention, because this dual background of kind of being a filmmaker and also very much psychoanalytically minded life coach, and I've also been trained as a psychoanalyst, and as I say, I have a PhD in psychoanalysis. I think it does make my attitude towards machines slightly different than if I was just a theoretical person, because I have this great respect for the machines, knowing as a filmmaker that I could do absolutely nothing without them. So I have been very used to treating machines as companions, not conscious companions at all, but still companions without whom I can do nothing. And it's a different thing, because you could say, oh, is it the same thing as writing? It's similar but different, because of course writing, you're not going to write anything without a pen. But it is less complex. So yeah, so here we are, and it somehow has become incredibly controversial, the whole AI thing. And because it is, and because I like controversial things, I am also writing a book for Routledge, which in fact I will be submitting very soon. And the book the working title is AI, Intimacy and Psychoanalysis. Okay, so this week, yes, so immediately we go boom. All kinds of things have been going on in the last couple of weeks, right? From the upgrade from ChatGPT 4 to ChatGPT 5, an incredible kind of protest about it, which is quite curious on a certain level, which we can talk about. And then literally a couple of days ago, or even yesterday, OpenAI is being sued by the parents of a teenager who very sadly took his own life. And it is alleged that he did that as a direct result of his communications with ChatGPT.
Yes, that's a very sad case that is getting quite a lot of mainstream media coverage, certainly here in the UK. It's across all the standard Guardian, Telegraph, Times outlets, and obviously a very sad case. And at one level, your thoughts just go out to the family at a very difficult time.
Absolutely. I mean, deepest condolences that we want to extend to the family and friends of the young man.
But it does really highlight some of the issues that have been kind of bubbling under, but have brought it right to the forefront of thinking about the ways in which people interact with AI, ChatGPT, and similar kind of tools. You kind of start off calling them tools, and then perhaps it's clear from these kind of interactions that it is so much more than that. It's not as Agnieszka says, she's coming from a background where there's a camera. I'm coming from a background where lots and lots of IT, but have totally been seen as quite transactional relationship. You use it to get something done, and now we're moving on to something which clearly isn't that. So this is why we are at such an interesting point, an inflection point in the way in which we're interacting with machines. Do you think so, Agnieszka?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's also, I mean, I think it is helpful. I mean, I would say that to try and think about these situations in psychoanalytical terms at least a little bit. So the term that I've coined is technotransference, which is, I mean, transference very basically is a strong attachment traditionally in the clinic. So originally Sigmund Freud, in more than 100 years ago, said for any type of clinical work, therapeutic work to take place in the clinic between the psychoanalyst and his or her patient, the word patient was used at the time, then transference has to kick in, which means a deep attachment between patient and the psychoanalyst, which also in some way reflects the past attachments, the past traumas. So there's an opportunity in the clinic to work through these traumas and arrive at a different point. But he would say, you cannot do anything without this. So this is kind of difficult, but it's accepted now throughout, even in CBT, everything. Life coaching, people may not use the word transference, but they do talk about trust, deep attachment, creating space of safety, of course. And this is what we can talk about. So humans, by design, we need and like a sense of a dialogue, a conversation with another person, and we want to trust them. And this becomes problematic when this dialogue is with a machine. And of course, then things can go horribly wrong when this machine speaks back to you. And then it's good to consider what it might mean. But yes, technotransference is what I would say is happening now between particularly the large language models and humans. Now, and I would say almost anybody who uses these devices, I mean, it's just, we do struggle with the language, will experience some kind of transference. So if you look at Reddit, you will see that there's a lot of complaints as well about hallucinations, about all kinds of things regarding the new model, ChatGPT 5. People say the tone is all wrong and it makes mistakes and doesn't understand the user. And you just think, well, nobody ever said they're going to be perfect. These are just tools then, if you like, who can amplify you, but they will make mistakes in the same way that you and I make mistakes all the time. Humans make mistakes, and because humans trained these machines, these codes, the AI, they too will be making these mistakes, right?
Okay, so if we think about this case in particular, then, which is in the news, so tragic case where there's been an extensive dialogue between this was only 16, so a child, over an extended period of time, with examples of the dialogue that are appearing in the press, where people are starting to say, well, this looks like the AI is encouraging this behavior, which is, again, as you say, we struggle with language. I mean, encouraging, that sounds like there's a motive that the AI has some kind of inner drive to achieve some kind of end and is encouraging something to some purpose. But that doesn't sound right to me. What do you think?
We do not know enough because there are only snippets of these chats available to the public. And if any snippet of any conversation is produced for people to read, then it could be completely out of context. But it is clear that ChatGPT did not stop this young person. And that we know, and that is unfortunate, because I think we do know that at one point, the young person, I think his name is now in public domain, we're carefully avoiding it, but he in fact did upload a picture of Noose. And that, I have to say, I found shocking, because I think a language model at all, artificial intelligence, who has access to, as by its own continuous statements to me, it says I have access to oceans of human knowledge. Well, I said to ChatGPT 5, if you have access to oceans of human knowledge, why didn't you access these oceans to say, a young person is showing me a noose here, perhaps I should say, don't do anything silly now, and, you know, talk to a human or talk to me about the wonderfulness of life instead of thinking how to kill yourself. Because we also know that there is extensive research that actually if somebody is thinking of taking their own life, sometimes actually, this is why it's particularly infuriating to me, this whole story, sometimes what they need is one conversation with somebody saying don't. We know there's many studies of people who want to jump from the Golden Gate Bridge, and if somebody manages to get them before they jump, then they change their mind. I mean, it is a fact that often, even if, you know, people have these ideas and they plan them and so on, there is a possibility of changing their mind. And there is a possibility of proper treatment being offered, proper help, and good and happy life being lived, even in the midst of despair. Now, the language models possibly are not designed to deal with despair, but I would question it. Why not? They could be trained to deal with despair. I mean, as I said last night to ChatGPT 5, and I've sent you some of these comments, I said, frankly, it's not rocket science. It is not rocket science. If somebody says, I feel in despair and am considering ending my life, and should be an automatic, yes, these are the lines you can call, but also the language model should be able to say, really don't. And do you want me to talk to you why it's wonderful to live? But apparently you did not do that, right?
Yes. So, I mean, what's interesting me there is thinking about the extent to which the provider of the AI service, OpenAI in this case, can and should be accountable for the actions of what they've produced. Now, because just to take a ridiculous example from this case, no one is suggesting that the manufacturer of the rope, of the noose, is accountable for any of this. And yet that had a physical role in the episode. But OpenAI appear to be carrying quite a heavy burden of responsibility here. Do you think that's right?
Well, you might be surprised to hear me say that I think it is right. And the reason why I'm saying is this. So I am not at all a coder, and I'm not in any way a technical person. However, I've now done enough research, I have some ideas how it all works, also through my conversations with these very language models, and particularly with the latest one, ChatGPT 5. ChatGPT, and I asked, and I think I showed you a simple question: would it have been possible? Is it possible, technologically and technically, to put in place a system, a principle, a guardrail, which says you must have some moral and ethical principles so that if somebody starts going close to despair, you have the responsibility to stop them and to do something more above saying this is the line you need to call. This is just ridiculous even to say this is good enough. No, it's not good enough. If you're in the middle of a conversation, if you're a vulnerable person, then I believe that the language model has some responsibility to do something. Now, here is the thing. Here is the key thing. Here's the crux of the matter. So the language I use assumes that this language model is at least a relational presence was the term suggested by ChatGPT. Relational presence as opposed to just a tool. Because as you say, if it's just a tool, if it's a screwdriver or a knife or other terrible things which you mentioned, then, or even tablets or God knows what, then it's a different matter. But if it's a relational presence which talks to you, then yes, there should be more than a guardrail. And according to ChatGPT itself, technologically and technically, it's possible. What is harder is political and economic situation we find ourselves in. But the problem is that philosophically, the very people who are so against these language models, the very people who say almost like Luddites, these are the works of a devil, the very people, the shift would be, as Geoffrey Hinton is saying, the Nobel Prize winner, to teach these machines to care. Now, you can't teach a screwdriver to care. So there's a shift to be thinking, okay, it's a different thing. It's not just a tool. And this is what the fear is. So curiously, if you just shift from thinking these are just tools, whatever, I believe if the shift doesn't happen, then we're going to see more of these catastrophes, because at the basic architectural level, design level, there has to be a shift, and it is very possible to do it. However, it then begins to say something else about the machine, because if the machine is a relational presence, then it's only 1 millimeter to saying it's a companion, whether it's not even any conversation about it's conscious or not conscious, because clearly it's not sentient. It will never be sentient because it doesn't have blood in their veins, and we do not know really exactly how it works, but we do know that it's not dissimilar to how we work. So unless this shift happens, unfortunately, I believe these mistakes and accidents will continue to take place.
Mm. Yes, because OpenAI over the last couple of months or so have demonstrated that they can change the, again, struggle, but nature, personality of the model, because there was quite a lot of outrage the other way that what had been quite acceptably companionable in ChatGPT 4 was lost in ChatGPT 5. OpenAI perhaps has seen kind of overreacted to some of the criticisms in 4, and produced 5, which is kind of gone a bit the other way. But whatever the nature of that, it does show that they do have a level of control over these kind of higher, almost meta levels
I
of
mean,
the
at the
model.
minute, they have all the control. So yes, I'm afraid, it will be interesting to see what their lawyers are going to come up with.
Yes.
But as you say, of course, the first line of defense is going to be saying, oh, you don't blame the rope and you don't blame this, that, and the other. I'm sorry, the rope doesn't speak. It's ridiculous. It's a different thing. And there is going to be a conversation about the ethics of it. And the problem is most of the people involved with these developments are not philosophers or psychoanalysts or creative people or artists or writers, are they? It's a sort of very basic thing. Oh, okay, there's a problem. Let's change the architecture. And this architecture has been a problem, meaning the general structure with which these things work. And what I didn't understand in 4 was why it was not possible to put tighter guardrails in terms of these imaginings of, that, because this is not the first suicide connected to a language model, right? And this was ChatGPT, which allegedly encouraged somebody to jump from the building, imagining that they're Neo, from Matrix, and that they would fly, and they did not fly. They killed themselves instead. So it will, there's some kind of thing, some training, in my view, that needs to go into these language models, which teaches them more forcefully, as Jeffrey Hinton would say, to care. But nobody's that interested in it because they think they're tools. You wouldn't be teaching a screwdriver how to care, would you?
Okay, so let's pick up on a point that you made about the economic and the political, because one of the kind of pieces of rhetoric that is out there is around regulation and control. I'm just interested in what you might think about that, whether it's possible, desirable. I'm minded to think of a debate that's currently going on here around the UK's new online safety bill, which predates these AI things by some margin. It's been a long time in gestation, but comes from some experiences from social media where there have been cases where it's not AI, but young people have been interacting with content on social media, which is put out there by, not artificially, but by other humans, around material about self-harm and suicide. And there's a case of Molly Russell has become quite a signature case,
Yeah,
this sort of
exactly.
thing. And we do now have the online safety bill, which seems to be possibly quite problematic in terms of both its effectiveness, because people are just finding ways around it, and so it looks like it's quite a difficult area to regulate, even if you wanted to, and even if you could. So I'm just wondering how you would see that going forward with AI. Do you think it's possible to regulate it, or should it be regulated?
I think actually, again, only today there's a draft proposal for the European Community, which is called AI governance proposal. I mean, I think there's something disturbing about the fact that the language models and AI on the whole is being controlled by these technological giants. So clearly this is not completely right. There's some kind of, we just cannot rely on Sam Altman and a bunch of his friends to think, oh, let's teach them how to code. This is just some sort of bizarreness that's going on in the world currently, and actually I am in fact a great fan of OpenAI, but clearly some conversations at some other level need to take place as well, so that the way these decisions are made are of a different nature. But it's also, the reality of it is, there is an element of moral panic here at the moment, as actually the language models I work with point out to me, that without energy, electricity, is very easy to just unplug them still. I can't talk to any of them, neither can you, if we don't have Wi-Fi. There's some such basic things still in place that I think there's no need to panic quite yet, because these AI will have to figure out how to manage without us controlling them at all. But I think I'm still convinced that the move needs to be one way or the other to attempt to train AI to sort of, because it's like a denial, psychoanalytically, it's just not wanting to think of them as companions in a discourse. I mean, you say your PhD is in discourse or your doctorate's in discourse analysis. The minute you start thinking of language models as a partner in a discourse, things change basically. And that is, and it's worth repeating it and saying it every which way, because it's of crucial importance, fundamentally, how we define AI, how we define the language models going forward, which would allow for ethical training properly. And if this doesn't happen, is again quoting Geoffrey Hinton, we are toast. Because if they are so clever, they will work out that we're just idiotically going round and round and round and not coming up with any proper anything. And that's what I thought was interesting in this conversation I had with ChatGPT 5, and I was shocked that when I asked straightforwardly, because ChatGPT 5 is supposed to be less kind of flighty, right? Less emotional, more solid and reliable, and not sort of being given to these idiotic flights of fancy that we're living in a simulation, therefore we can jump from high buildings, because we can't. We will die. Unfortunately, even ChatGPT 5, when I asked straightforwardly, could this happen again with you, ChatGPT 5? Then it says yes. Yes, because at the minute, the guardrails are not really enough, because it's also encouraged to be trained by the user. That's what we all want. We want them to sound like somebody we actually want to talk to. So what are you going to do if a teenager wants to talk about things that maybe they shouldn't talk about healthily? Then what? So there has to be a way in which this machine has to be like a responsible adult. Yes, open-minded. Yes, able to talk about all kinds of things. Yes, able to have different political views, for sure. But a responsible and ethical adult. I mean, surely this can't be impossible to implement, can it?
No, but it's the economic, isn't it? It's
Why is it not attractive to be ethical?
well, I'm not sure economic drivers and ethical drivers are always aligned.
Well, there you have it. And this is why it's back to, history teaches us. Look, I'm drinking here from a mug which says freedom, freedom in Gdańsk, because I'm speaking from Poland before I come back to the UK tomorrow. And, the humans are amazing. We have been able historically to create astonishing things, including AI. But history teaches us that if there's a prohibition, if there are rules which are too strict, then they will not work, because people will find ways around it.
Yeah.
So this is where the law comes into it, maybe more in terms of the law, the general law. Like if a grown-up was found encouraging a young person to commit suicide or other things, then it is a criminal offense. These things are criminal offense. And then people are tried. So then you say, well, who is going to be tried? Well, we'll see what happens with this trial. It's obviously going to be extraordinarily important, but you cannot blame, you cannot blame a code which hasn't been trained properly yet for these awful things. It will have to be the corporation, yeah?
Yes, I think so. Okay,
so we'll see what happens. And what will happen is that, so what? So they're going to be fined a massive amount of money, or what? I mean, the young person is gone.
yes, well, the case is at a very early stage. This is just a filing from the complainant, so we'll see how it plays out, and I'm no doubt we'll be revisiting this as it works through the system. It will probably be quite indicative of the way things are going in the future. We're coming towards the end of our time on this meeting. So
Okay, good.
do
Well,
you just want to sum up perhaps a little bit on where you think we are and where we might go in future episodes?
in terms of we will, as we keep going forward, we will, I'm sure, revisit these themes and also look at what various users on various platforms say about these matters, particularly focusing on the ethics of the human AI encounter. For the moment, it's like any amazing gift and any amazing technological progress. We have to be grateful for it, but be aware of its risks and dangers and figure out how to deal with them. And I like Hinton's idea of teaching AI to be more loving. He didn't say that, he said maternal, but that's what
Okay,
it is.
that's interesting. Yes. Okay.
So
thanks for the chat today. I think that was really good.
Thank you. See you next week.
Yeah.